Ayo, what's good? So, long time no see. Gagamitin ko yung game na to for the tutorial, right? Dinevelop to ni Timon Herzog, right? And kaka-release lang ng 1.0 niya quite recently, no? Nakita ko to sa early access matagal na. Nung nilaro ko, I thought na parang, oh, this is a good way to like teach how to code. Kung lalaroin mo siya by itself, you will learn a lot already. I've been working as a software engineer professionally for the past 2 years. Honestly, this caters to the whole spectrum. So kung elementary, high school student ka, gusto mong matuto paano mag-program, this is good for you. And if you're on like the other end of the bell curve, may challenges din to for you. Kahit anong level of programmer ka, I would say, may enjoy mo tong game na to. And in my case, this is a good way to like teach you. Pwede mong magpakita ng code and then makikita mo yung results, instant feedback, makikita mo line by line paano yung execution. So, it's a really nice teaching tool as well. No? Naka-base to sa Python, pero if you're using like JavaScript, if you're using C, Java, right, or any common programming language, magta-transfer naman yung skills eh. And I think software engineering in general in the field, it's mostly language agnostic, right? Na parang at the end of the day, it's how you think as a programmer, right? It's not like really your expertise sa isang language. Although it does bring some nuances. Yeah, so let's get started. No? Pag mag-load tayo ng fresh save. So load tayo ng fresh save. Ganito yung itsura niyan. Kukode mo tong robot na to and magkaka-resources ka, right? May documentation to in-game. Pero of course, I'll just show snippets of that documentation when we need it, right? Pero if you want to go ahead and read it yourself, go get the game. Like 100%, I do recommend it. Yeah, let's get started. Right. So yung robot mo, may mga built-in functions siya by itself. I'll get into functions later on. Let's leave it at that muna. Essentially, they're pieces of code that you could do na gagawin ng bot. Right? Hindi mo kailangan i-code by yourself. So for example, to do a flip. So kung kinuha ko to, then nararan ko, yan. Flip yung robot. That's it. Pero in our case, yung important dito is yung harvest. Yeah, let's just call that, no? Yun. Nag-harvest siya ng isang hay. And then dineposit niya dun sa piggy bank. Right? So pag pinlay ko to, what happens in Python is kapag may file ka, lahat ng nakasulat dun sa root na yun, nararan. Kung naka-Java ka, it might be familiar na para meron kang public main, whatever, right? And ito yung entry point mo, right? And if may other functions ka sa Java, this won't run, right? Like, it might get defined, but it won't run, right? So kung may iba kang function na private, myfunc or something, no? Hindi yan aandar. Ito yung entry point. Pero when it comes to Python, when you run files in Python, essentially run niya lahat to. Right? Line by line. So play ko ulit, harvest. Hanggang makailan tayong hay. Right? And papakita ko sa inyo yung unlock tree nito. So if you can see, the game opens up. Right? So hindi tayo overwhelmed with complexity. Pero for the purposes of this tutorial, what I would like is ma-unlock muna natin to lahat, itong coding stuff, particularly itong branch nung tree. Pero for now, unlock natin tong isa, while. Yung while loop, may check siyang condition here. And in our case, sa Python, capital T true, ito yung boolean value natin saying true or false. Right? So essentially, this will run forever. Right? Unless may break tayo in the middle. Right? So kung piplay ko to, makita natin mag-harvest yan ulit-ulit. Right? Hindi yan matatapos unless shutdown ko yung game or shutdown ko PC ko. Right? So yan, continuously yan kumukuha ng wheat. That's it. Right? In other languages, may makikita kang ibang paradigms ng while loop. And may use cases din yun na useful. In my experience, hindi ko talaga nagamit. Very limited usage siya. That's why sa Python wala rin siyang gantong equivalent. Yung do while. So may while and then meron kang condition here. Never ko ito masyado nagagamit. I'm sure may nuances to. And yeah, I really just don't use it. Pero when it comes to C, right, or C-like stuff, yan, meron kang condition. And then meron kang execution sa loob, meron kang code sa loob, may instructions ka sa loob, right? When it comes to Python, yung difference lang is, kunyari itong bracketing, pwede kang maglagay ng code mo dyan. Iba't ibang, right? Kahit magulo, okay lang yan. No? This is okay for C, right? Or for C-like languages. Pero when it comes to Python, wala tayong bracketing. Meron tayong indentation, and that's our form of bracketing. So essentially, what's happening here is meron tayong while harvest. Pero instead of may curly braces tayo, what happens is may colon ka. And then, chine-check niya to nakahilera. Right? I do believe pwede rin ganyan na sumobra indent mo. Pero kailangan consistent yan na sumobra. Right? So, kung play ko to, like, lipat natin yung execution dyan. Yan, umaandar, no problem. Pero kung hindi consistent yung indentation ko, there will be some error. There's also some nuances kung gumamit ako ng spaces na nakamix sa tabs. Right? So, yun, those are some things to keep in mind. Right? So, delete ko na to. So, with loops, essentially, what you can do as well is mag-break ka. Right? So, pwede mong sirain yung loop. So, mag-break ka lang ganyan. And then, ayun, it's as if wala tayong while loop dito. Kasi, yun, nag-break siya kaagad. Ngayon, medyo marami na rin yung hay natin. Mag-upgrade tayo. Right? So, yung unang upgrade na useful dito is yung speed. Right? So, right now, kasi pag in-upgrade ko to, ayan, bumilis yung ating bot. Right? Yung problema naman is in-harvest niya yung wheat, hindi pa siya nag-grow. Right? So, wala tayo totaling nakukuha ng wheat. 338 pa rin hanggang ngayon. Right? So, it would be nice kung sasabihin natin yung bot na harvest mo to kung pwede na i-harvest. Right? So, paano natin figure out kung pwede na i-harvest? So, one naive strategy, naive we say is medyo parang yung first attempt mo na yung parang pinaka-obvious na solution, right? Is, sige, mag-wait tayo, do a flip, right? Kasi pag nag-flip siya, naghihintay siya, right? So, do a flip, harvest, ayan. Kaya lang, mapapansin mo, there's a time na fully grown na yung wheat, right? Ayun, 100%, right? For like half a second. Fully grown na yung wheat and hindi pa tayo nag-harvest. So, may nagsasayang tayo ng oras dun eh. Right? So, in our sense, it's as if na-bottleneck tayo dun sa do a flip. Right? So, yan, kita natin, nag-do a flip and then mag-harvest. So, instead, gagamit tayo ng isa pang built-in. Essentially, ginagawa nung can harvest is titignan niya yung block sa baba. And then, magre-return siya ng true and false kung hindi pa siya ready. Right? So, yeah, in our case, let's do that, no? Paano natin check yun? I'm sure you're aware with an if block, right? Pwede natin gawin yan, right? So, kung pwede siyang i-harvest, edi harvest mo. So, now we can see successfully na niyang in-harvest yung wheat. Kasi every tick, right, check niya kung pwedeng i-harvest and then ha-harvest niya. Right? Pretty straightforward, no? So now mag-unlock tayo sa isa pang tanim. Right? So ito mag-unlock tayo ng wood, right? And on top of that, i-double natin yung yield ng wheat, ng grass in particular. Grass pala tawag niyan. Right? So tig-dalawa na nakukuha natin grass ngayon. Kesa kanina na tig-isa. Ano lang ngayon? Papabilis lang ng upgrades. Right? So in-unlock ko tong bush. Yung bush, kailangan siyang taniman. Right? So, makikita natin may plant na dito. So, plant entities.bush para magtanim siya ng bush. Let's just plant. Right? So, while true, sige, kung kaya nang i-harvest natin. And then, ipaplant natin yung bush. Right? So, there are some questions here. Right? So, kung baguhan kang programmer, yung 100% na kailangan mong gawin is yung experiment. I do come already equipped with years of experience and the degree in ComSci. So, hindi ko na to, this comes naturally, right? And hopefully, it will come naturally to you. Pero I've seen people na parang, okay, if can harvest, sige, what if mag-else ka na lang? and then lipat mo yung plant dyan, right? So what happens here is, kung hindi niya kayang i-harvest, pipilit niyang pa-plant. So kung susubukan natin, right, that's a very important skill is you try it out, right? You test it out, right? Mukha okay naman, walang problema. So nag-plant siya, right? Problema, makita natin may parang maliit na period na mag-harvest siya. And hindi siya semantically correct, right? So tawag natin dito, umaandar siya. Pero hindi siya quote-unquote tama, right? So mali yung semantics natin. Kasi kung hindi niya kayang i-harvest, di tanim ka ng plant. So nakita natin nag-a-attempt siyang tumatanim always, right? So in a real life situation, ayaw mo mangyari to. Na parang ayaw mo nagsasayang ka ng compute dun sa plant. Instead, gusto natin nagpa-plant lang siya after niya mag-harvest. Kasi there's no point, right? Hindi tama yung semantics. That's the term, right? Semantics, right? So, if may mali ka sa code mo dahil mali yung pag-formulate mo ng instructions, that's what we call a semantic error, right? Kasi mali yung semantics mo. Kung sabihin natin may nawawala kang colon or may mali kang spelling or something like that, that's what we call a syntax error. Kasi mali yung syntax, right? Syntax is yung pag-form ng words themselves, right? Kung correct yung tokens mo and everything, correct yung spelling mo, correct yung mga colon, semicolon if you're in C, right? So that's what we call a syntax. Syntax errors are super easy to spot kasi typically mag-error yung code mo, right? Yan, there must be a colon, right? This is a syntax error. Pero a semantic error, it's one of the hardest errors to debug, right? And that's where you come in. Kasi the only way that you can solve this is you understand what's happening, right? Although this has been quite easy to solve these days if you're using AI. Kung may LLM ka, kung naka-cursor ka or naka-Gemini, whatever, Copilot, these have been easier these days to solve, right? And so yan. Tuloy lang natin yan. Nag-harvest siya ng wood. Right? So yung next na pwede natin gawin sa unlock natin is palakihan natin yung farm. Catch kasi dito, right? Kasi you might ask, sapat naman yung isang plot Bakit kailangan natin ng 3? Right? Number 1, kasi kaya nating maging 3. Right? Why not? Right? And number 2, makikita mo yung bot natin doon lang ginagawa habang hinihintay niyang tumubo tong bush. So might as well magtanim tayo sa ibang plot habang naghihintay yan. Right? So may parang parallelization na nangyayari. Essentially, nag-grow yan in parallel. Right? So habang nag-grow yun. Right? Even though isa lang yung bot natin, mas marami yung na-harvest natin kasi we get to utilize yung idle time natin for this. Right? Kasi may idle time siya. Right? Wala siyang gagawin, puro niya chine-check tong can harvest habang nag-grow to. Meanwhile, itong ibang plots walang ginagawa. So we would like to utilize it. Right? So right now, it's as if we're utilizing 1/3 lang. So parang rough number lang, sabihin natin we have like a 33% utilization. When it comes to computer science or in engineering in general, right, you would want to utilize 100%. So, kasi sayang right? So, kunyari may CPU ka, meron kang ginagawang importante na algorithm dun sa CPU mo, nakikita mo yung utilization niya parang nasa 5% lang. Alam mo you're wasting a lot of like money and energy or whatever, right? Dun sa 95% na hindi ginagamit. Although, in real life, hindi naman talaga umaabot na ganun kataas, right? In real life, marami kang factors in play na kunyari yung memory bandwidth mo, right? Na load niya muna yung variable from RAM or load niya muna from storage or may network I/O blocking stuff ka, right? That's what we call it, right? There are some nuances na hindi mo talaga kayang 100%. In our case din, may makikita tayong points na hindi naman natin may utilize yung buong field. Pero it's still your obligation as a good comsci guy or as a good coding guy, good programmer, na i-maximize mo yung utilization as much as possible. Right? So these are new terms for you. Right? Yeah. So what we'll do here is may bago tayong built-in move. right? And in this game, meron tayong 4 na cardinal directions, right? So, north, south, east, west. And yung kagandahan ng farm na to is naglo-loop around. So, kung nandito yung bot natin, right? Kung nandito siya sa taas, kapag nag-move north ako, babalik lang siya sa simula. So, while true, if kaya niyang i-harvest, right, ito gagawin niya, harvest niya, and then magtatanim ng panibago. Otherwise, right, dito na papasok yung else. Otherwise, mag-move ka. Another way to do this semantically is, alisin natin yung else and move north ka lagi. Right, so harvest, plant, and then mag-move north siya regardless. I think in this case, both will work. Walang problema. So yan, kita natin na move north lang siya lagi. So, try natin yung may else. Essentially, it's just the same. Right? Yun. So, mas marami yung wood na kukuha natin ngayon per second. Like, on average. Right? Compared sa isang plot lang ginagamit natin kanina. Another challenge will be i-expand natin ulit. And ngayon, dalawa na yung dimensions na iniisip natin. Right? Dimensions in a sense na kanina na isang plot lang tayo, wala tayong dimensions. And then nung nagkahilera tayo, may isang dimension tayo, north and south, right? Ngayon may dalawang dimensions na tayo niyan. Pwede tayong punta ng north and south, pwede tayong west and east, right? So, in our case, gusto natin gamitin yung buong field, right? So, same thing, i-parallelize natin siya. So, how do we do that effectively? So, one way na you could do this is gagawa ka ng set of instructions, right? I'm just showing you na I have seen people code like this, right? So, makikita natin yung parang execution yan, right? Do a flip, harvest, do a flip, right? Ayun, it kind of works, right? I think may mali ako sa semantics ko din. Pero, yeah, umaanda, right? So, as you get experience in programming, this will come to you naturally din, right? Pero, if you're new, it's nice to visualize mong ganyan, right? And ano yung pwede mong i-trivialize, right? Anong pwede mong i-abstract away. Alisin mo yung repetition. So, in the business, we call this refactoring. Nire-refactor natin yung code natin. And may mga rules yan online. Like, you could definitely look them up. Yung mga rules for like clean code or something like that, or readable code, right? Kasi ano ba yung mga problema nito, right? Number one, aandral lang to sa 3x3 na farm, right? And kapag lumaki na farm natin ulit, iibahin na naman natin to. That's number one, right? Yung mga problems ng code na to. Hindi siya nag-fit sa size ng farm. And number two is mahirap basahin. And you might think, grabe, Carlos, pakialam ko kung mahirap basahin, ako naman yung sumulat, right? Pero when it comes to work, or even like your own work, kasi yung reasoning dito, ako naman sumulat, right? Pakialam ko, right? Or ako lang nagtatrabaho, right? Yung problem nito is, kapag lumalaki kasi yung code base mo, or you work with other people, coding is more like 80% reading and 20% writing, or some rule like that. Basta it's majority binabasa mo yung current code mo, right? Binabasa mo yung existing code mo. So, which is why gusto mo malinis tignan, right? Kunyari ako, titignan ko to. Sabihin natin naging 5x5 na to, and then kinapapaste ko na naman. You just see na parang ang daming umuulit na lines na hindi naman kailangan ulitin in the first place. Right? So these are like the big reasons bakit gusto natin to i-refactor. Right? Gusto natin maging malinis, gusto natin maging readable. Right? And in a technical sense, gusto natin maging scalable. Right? Yun yung number one. Scalable has another meaning as well. Right? Kung nagpe-perform efficiently at larger inputs. Right? So, kunyari may 20x20 farm tayo and super bagal niya sa 20x20, hindi na siya scalable din. Right? So, that's another meaning nung, or mas gamit na meaning ng scalable. Right? Pero for our sense, hindi man siya functionally scalable. Right? Kasi again, kung naging 5x5 to, iibahin na naman natin yan. So yeah, let's fix this. So, balik tayo kay main. This is working really fine, by the way. Yung catch natin here is, we want to do this number of times dun sa side niya. By the way, square yung farm lagi. Right? Never siya nagiging rectangle. Gusto natin gawin to for 3 times itong north, pataas. And then gusto natin i-move yan sa east 1 time and then ulitin na naman niya lahat. Right? So, buti na lang yung drone natin, may bago siyang built-in din. Get world size. Ito, range, get world size. If you're using a C-like language, essentially, ganito ka gumagawa ng for loop eh. Right? Let me teach you about for loops. So, nag-initialize ka ng variable and then naglalagay ka ng terminating condition. Right? Sabihin natin 3. Right? And then meron kang incremental na execution here. Right? I'm sure there's a proper term for it. So, what happens sa C is, bago mag-start yung for loop, ito yung gagawin niya. Magbe-break yung for loop once nag-false to. Right? And after each iteration, right? Ito yung tawag dyan. May iteration tayo. Yung isang iteration is tatapusin niya yung whatever code na nandyan. So, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Isang iteration yung isang ganyan. Ito yung gagawin niya. Right? And then gagawa na naman siya ng isang iteration ulit. Right? And kagandahan with for loops is nagagamit mo din yung variable mo sa loob. Right? So, magagamit mo yan and this will be 0, 1, 2 per iteration. This is how you do it for C. For Python, essentially, meron kang tinatawag na lists. Wala pa tayo sa lists. And actually, wala pa nga tayo lists. Kailangan natin i-unlock yun. Pero it's important to understand here. Right? So, sabihin natin meron tayong list of 0, 1, 2. Yung ginagawa ni Python is ganyan. Kukunin niya yung value ng first, ng second, hanggang sa last. Right? And then yun yung magiging value ni I. Matatapos yung buong for loop niya kapag naubos niya yung list. Right? And that's one important nuance that you need to learn about Python. And itong list na to, pwede din natin yan i-generate by ourselves. Right? One quick way to generate it is gagawa ka ng range. This is a Python function. This is not a function by the game. Isa tong generator. Right? We call this a generator. Right? Pero for our purposes right now, we just say na gumagawa siya ng list. This is essentially the same as ganyan. Right? For our purposes. So ngayon, yung get world size yan, re-return niya yung number of cells ng isang side. Right? And by the way, si range, magsa-start yan from 0 to kung ano man yung input mo. Right? So kunyari may range n kang ganyan. Right? More nuances with range is pwede kang mag-set ng start, ng end, and ng increment. By default, kung wala kang nilalagay dyan, right? Kung naglagay ka lang ng isang number, yung mangyayari is 0, meron kang n, and then meron kang increment, right? N plus 1. Right? Yung itong plus equal sa Python, by the way, essentially, shorthand lang yan sa ganyan. Right? So, nilipat na lang yung yung plus doon, and then natanggal yung n. Right? So, by default, yun yung nangyayari with Python. Yeah, gawin natin yung range na yun. Right, get world size. So, kunyari ganyan. For I in range, what we can do is move north. Right? Hindi ako mag-while muna ngayon. Right? Makikita natin what will happen. Right? So, play. 1, 2, 3. And then, print din natin yung value ni I para makita mo yung value ni I. So, nag-print siya ng 0, nag-print siya ng 1, and then nag-print siya ng 2. And for this game, it's also quite useful na pakita natin yung output. Yan. So, nag-print siya ng 0, print siya ng 1, nag-print siya ng 2. Right? Pwede rin natin print yung buong range. Right? Para makita niyo yung output ni get world size. So, piprint na dapat 3 times yun. Right? So, range 0, 3. Right? So, kamukha nga siya nung default. Right? Hindi siya talaga list. right? Pero for our purposes, we treat it as 1, right? You don't have to think about it right now. To be specific, we call this an iterable, right? Kasi pwede ka mag-iterate over an iterable, right? Yung isang pag-run mo nung iterable or yung isang instance ng iterable, we call it an iteration, right? So ito isang iteration to. So these are examples of jargon na kailangan mong i-familiarize yourself. Kasi when we talk with other engineers, ito yung mga ginagamit mong words. Ginagawa yan, bumove siya ng north, and after na isang buong for loop, babalik siya kay starting position niya. Now we want to do this 3 more times, right? Or the number of cells more times, right? Pupunta siya sa east. Ngayon, itong gagawin natin, we call this a nested loop, right? Kasi gagawa tayo ng loop within a loop. Pwede tayo mag for I in range get world size ulit, right? And then uulitin niya to 3 times. Yung catch with Python, alam ko aandar dapat to even if parehas silang I, right? Kasi kahit na redefine si I dito, it does not really matter. Kasi unlike si C na nag-check siya ng variable ni I, kapag change mo yung value ni I, mag-fail na to eh. Unlike si Python na si I niya is kinukuha niya lang yung element doon eh. So, pwede natin try. Dapat magpiprint yan 3 times ulit. Right? So, makaka 0, 1, 2, 0, 1, 2, 0, 1, 2. So, ayun. Kita natin walang problema. Right? Na-print niya 0, 1, 2, 0, 1, 2, 0, 1, 2. Kapag ginawa mo to with C, magkakaproblema ka. May nuances with the scope. Pero, I'll get to that later on. And ngayon, sabihin natin, natin to. Palitan natin, right? Kasi typically bad practice din naman kasi yan. Ayaw mong gawin yan eh. And honestly, hindi naman natin gagamitin si I. So later on, you will see na maglalagay lang ako ng underscore na ganyan. That means dinidiscard ko lang, right? Hindi siya gagamitin. So gawin natin XY. Pwede natin i-print yung XY na ganyan. And if I'm not mistaken, pwede naman to quick print para hindi siya nagpe-print dito. And mabilis natin makikita dyan sa output. So kung pinlay natin yun, ayun, mag-iterate yung inner loop, yung 0, 1, 2, 0, 1, 2 dito. And then ito yung outer loop, 0, 1, and then 2. So yun yung nested loop. Ito yung inner loop natin. Ito yung outer loop. And for each outer loop, right, ito balik natin kay north. For each outer loop, kasi yan, this will happen, ito yung inner loop natin, pataas. And babalik na naman siya kay outer loop ulit. Pag bumalik siya kay outer loop, gusto natin mag-move siya east. Right, and then ulit. And then east, may ulit. Then east, babalik siya ulit. Right? So move east, dito sa labas. Right? Pwede natin bigyan ng space para mas readable siya. So sige, play natin. Let's see what happens. Right? And ayun, nasa scan na niya yung parehas na directions. Right? That's great. No? Now, pwede nating ipasok itong actual execution niyan. Napaplant naman niya lahat. And I think it would be better kung si North ilagay natin dito sa huli. Kasi what would happen is mag-North muna siya and then di niya check to. Right? So semantics again. So now we want this to happen forever. Right? So maglalagay tayo ng while true. So lumalaki itong nested loop natin. May dalawa tayong inner loops. Right? Essentially yung nangyayari. Loop din to, by the way. Infinite loop without a break. Now na-utilize natin yung buong farm. And we can see, ito yung una niyang pinlant, di ba? Fully grown na to and hindi pa siya tapos sa buong field. Right? So, pwede na natin bilisin pa yung drone para makabalik siya dun. Mas mabilis. So, that's a good sign na pwede na tayong mag-scale up sa speed. Yan, kita natin. 4Y, 3 times to, and then move east. Right? Kaya I find this a great teaching aid kasi nakikita natin yung line by line execution. Right? So before we end this, yung target ko is ma-unlock yung si functions. And kailangan nyo ng carrots. Si carrots, may bagong challenge na naman yan. Right? Kailangan niya nakabungkal yung soil, nakatil. Right? So, makikita natin yung documentation here. By default, ito ground soil to. Grounds grassland siya. Right? And kailangan ni carrot soil. Right? And sinasabi ng documentation is, change niya to soil kapag nag-till ka. And kapag nag-till ka ulit, babalik siya kay grassland. And may bago din tayong pang-check nung ground type. Right? Yung pang-check natin ng ground type, nakalock din siya dito. So, kunin na natin yan. Unlock natin yan. Unlock natin yan. Right? Senses. So, may sensor na yung drone. So, ngayon, let's try planting some carrots. Right? So, kung ginawa ko lang plant carrot, nothing will happen. So, hindi siya nag-work. Ngayon, what we want to happen is if get ground type. Right? Itong double equals, right? Kasi typical question is why double equals? Bakit hindi na lang isang equals? As SQL, makikita mo isang equals lang yan. Kasi we don't have this problem. You will see why. Tawag kasi natin dito, it's an operator. Essentially, operator, minomodify niya yung value ng isa or more variables. Right? In our case, tawag dito binary operator yan. Right? Tinatawag natin binary kasi dalawa. Right? May dalawang sides ka dyan. A equals B. Right? Yung ibang binary operators na alam natin by default yan. A plus B. Right? A minus B. A divided by B. Right? Meron ka ding ibang types of operators. Meron kang unary operator. Right? Unary is isa lang. So if you're familiar with Boolean stuff, tawag kasi natin dito Boolean, true or false. So ginawa natin not A. Right? Yan, isa lang kailangan yan. Wala namang kailangan ng pangalawa. Wala kailangan ng B. Kaya tawag natin dyan unary operator. Right? So, not A. Kasi gagawin natin dito, A equals true. Right? Kapag nag-not A ka dyan, magiging, siya? Right? Not A, this will be false. Kaya nagiging double equals to. Kasi operator din to. Right? So, kailangan mong i-differentiate ito sa double equals. Right? Kasi ito, equality operator. In common parlance, in common usage, tawag mo dito is assignment. Right? Assignment operator. So, yung pag-assign mo mismo, that's actually an operator. Kasi nag-a-assign ka ng value. Right? A gets assigned the value of B. Much like A gets divided by the value of B. So, binary operator din yung assignment itself. Right? That's why kailangan natin double equals. So, ito, equality operator, and then yung binabalik niya nagiging boolean. Right? So, either true or false. So, check niya kung equal to parehas. Now, in other languages, mayroon din tayong ternary operators. In Python itself, may ternary operators tayo, pero hindi umaandar for this game, sadly enough. So, meron kang A equals B if C, right? Else D. Right? Tinatawag kong ternary kasi kahit apat na mukha na ganyan. Kasi nag-a-assign lang tayo dyan eh. Right? It's as if ganyan lang siya. Right? Ternary operators tawag dyan. No? Kasi yun, tatlo ginagamit yan. May mention ko lang dito, pero hindi umaandar sa game. Right? Pero yun, operators. So if get ground type is equal to, kita natin yung grounds. Kung grassland siya, bungkalin natin before tayo mag-trim. Right? So kung raran natin yan, ayan, binubungkal niya muna. And nag-break. Kasi what happens here is nagpo-false tong harvest. Right? So never siya nagpa-plant. So in our case, i-copy natin dyan. Kasi kapag inalis ko to, right? Kapag inalis ko yung plant na yan, kapag in-harvest niya, hindi niya siya magpa-plant ulit. Even though nakabungkal na maayos. Right? Kasi nandito sa loob. Right? Later on, refactor din natin yan. Huwag kayong mag-alala. Right? Clear muna. Yan, kita na natin yung edge cases ng, ito pala tawag dyan, edge cases. Yung opposite ng edge cases, we call it happy path, right? So yung happy path natin, we start with clear grassland, and then titil natin plant harvest, right? So yung itsura nung ano na yan clear, nire-reset niya. Umaandar tayo sa happy path. So, ito yung happy path natin, right? So, may mga edge cases tayo na tinatawag in programming as well. So, one edge case is if ground is already tilled. Yun, kasi hindi tayo nag-start with grassland. What if stuff is already planted? Anong gagawin natin doon? Right? So, we need to make this more tolerant or fault tolerant. Mas, mas mabait kapag may errors. Right? Or kapag may edge cases tayo. Tawag natin doon, mas tolerant siya. So, ngayon, let's refactor that. Right? What if nakita natin itong plant na to nasa loob? What if naka-soil na siya, hindi siya papasok? And what if hindi pa pwedeng i-harvest? Ginagawa niya is mag-move siya na north regardless. Ngayon, we could do here is if get entity type is not equal to entities.carrot, right? Pwede tayo magtanim. Dito na tayo magtatanim nun. Right? And handled na dapat yung stuff natin dyan. Right? Yun. Now it's planting carrots. Anong problema? Diba? Ngayon, babottleneck na naman tayo sa size. So this is a good time na lakihan na natin yung size ng field. And dahil lumaki na yung field natin, pwede natin to i-restart. Magmamatch na siya sa 4x4. May ma-unlock na tayong dapat niyan? Functions. And, or kailangan pa ba ng pumpkins for functions? So, kailangan ng 40 carrots. Kailangan maghintay. We will run into another problem here. Right? Kasi yung bawat pag-plant ng carrot natin, kumakain niya ng hay. And maganda na wag tayo mag-plant ng carrots kapag wala tayong masyadong hay. Let's go ahead and start using yung newly unlocked na variables natin. So, kapag set ka ng mga variables, in my case, tawag dito constant to. Constant kasi hindi siya nag-iiba. And meron kang mga naming conventions ng variables when it comes to constants. And typically yung constants mo naka-all caps. So all caps natin, sabihin natin, hey, threshold. Sabihin natin, I would like to have 100 hay. Right? Kasi kung pe-play ko to, hindi siya nakakapag-plant ng carrots kasi hindi na niya afford. Right? Zero na yung hay natin. Kung titignan natin yung carrot, plant cost. Right? So, ayaw natin maubos yung resources natin. Kasi gagamitin pa natin yung hay. So, hay threshold, 100. And gawa tayo ng wood threshold din. Which is 100. So, gusto natin na kapag less than to, right, plant ka ng hay. Kapag less than yan, plant ka ng wood. Dahil na-unlock natin yung senses, meron din tayong num items. Right? So, pwede natin gamitin yan. Palitan natin to. Right? Let's say meron tayong what to plant, right? So per iteration na itong malaking while true, gawa tayo ng what to plant, right? And by default, let's say entities.carrot to. And papasa natin yung what to plant dito. Okay, plant, right? So if get entity type is not equal to that entity, itanim mo regardless. Now we decide what to plant. Right, so if num items entities.hay items.hay is less than hay threshold, right? What to plant will become grass. So otherwise, items.wood is less than wood threshold. And then mag-plant ka ng bush, right? So ngayon na wala tayong hay, magpa-plant niya ng grass. Right? Fast forward ko to, pakita ko sa inyo kapag nasatisfy na niya yung hay. And ayun, kakatapos siya lang kay hay. Right? Ngayon nagpa-plant siya na siyang wood kasi 95 lang siya. May mga optimizations na tayo pwedeng gawin din. Dito na gagamit, hindi na utilize. Habang nag-harvest siya, pwedeng may mag-grow din na iba dyan. So later on, pwede nating improve yung program natin further. And unlock ko yung functions here. And we will use this for the next episode. Yeah, I hope na-enjoy nyo to. Right? So yeah, next episode, this will be on functions. And then paano natin to i-improve. So yeah, hope you enjoyed this. And yeah, see you in the next one.